Hello, this is Abby.
Dear Abby, this is gonna be a long one.
Oh boy.
Dear Abby, how do you tell the difference between a new exciting crush and a rebound?
Does it matter?
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Welcome to our little corner of the internet. This is the Dear Abby podcast. I hope you stay and hang out with us. See you in a sec. Welcome back, everybody, to today's episode of Dear Abby. I'm your host. My name is Abby, and welcome back to this week's episode. How many times can I say welcome to this episode in one intro? So this week, I wanted to talk about apathy and feeling just apathetic towards life, everything, mostly because that's how I've been feeling this week. And when you've been in recovery for a long time for something and some things work, some things don't, but you still haven't recovered and you still feel bombarded with intrusive thoughts some days, and you still have some compulsive behaviors that even though you know aren't helping, you can't. Not that I can't, I'm not supposed to be saying that, but it's really hard to not do. And so I think that adds on a layer of shame or just helplessness, hopelessness, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about that and how to deal with feeling apathetic when you're in recovery and how to just do the stuff anyways that you're supposed to do. I also wanted to talk about, specifically for OCD, when your themes change. So it's kind of a whack-a-mole at times with OCD, and I know people say, some therapists say, it's all the same across the board, like with OCD, doesn't matter the content. And then some do say some themes are a little bit stickier, and they also are a little bit more challenging because they come with more layers. With certain themes, there's just more layers of shame that are added versus when I'm dealing with somatic OCD or something within my body. I don't carry this disgust with myself and this shame. There's still a little bit of like a frustration, but it's not like this self-loathing shame piece. So I wanted to touch on that when your OCD changes themes, and I think I just wanted to express my experience and just share my experience with that happening, and also when it comes to how to do the work and just about how tricky it can be at times with changing themes, and it's just can be very discouraging, which I think that ties into the apathy. But before all that stuff, I wanted to share some dubs and L's from this week. Okay, so my dub this week was Keaton and I made like a financial plan, and we planned out for the next 5 years, and we had kind of like an overall budget and then how much we want to make and our goals and where we want to be in a couple of years. That experience was super helpful for me to kind of know that we're on the same page with finances, and also that we have a goal that we're working towards together. And I think it just helps me get into the mindset, even though we're not married yet, of, okay, he's going to be my husband and he's going to be my financial partner. We're going to share finances. It's been a while. I'm really excited for that, honestly, because he's a lot better with money than I am. I just save. Like, I'm not good at investing. I really just want to invest my time into thinking about it, even though I know it's important, but I feel like he enjoys it. So why would I try to trick myself into liking it? If he enjoys it, just tell, we can collaborate, but you like the stuff, you can plan all the stuff. So that was really, I wouldn't say fun, but it was very useful and very grounding, and just made me feel like, okay, we have a direction to go to. So that was nice. And then my other dub was I bought a course from Instagram from these girls that do muscle release, tension release for your neck and your back and your head. And it's really just for posture and to improve your posture. And posture is something that I've always struggled with, and I've always felt a little bit insecure about, just because I know I don't put in that much time to improve my posture. So I just always feel like I want to improve it. I've also just had, like I said last week, really tight traps and really tight neck muscles and everything. So I bought this course that helps with your posture basically. And I did it this morning for the first time. And I already kind of feel a difference. Just when I was at work, I felt like my neck wasn't as intense. I'm a little bit sore in my shoulders, but not to the point where I feel like sick, because usually that gives me a tension headache. But I feel more relaxed, like there's more room in between my neck, if that makes sense. My L for this week, I think, is just that I've been feeling really apathetic. Like even right now, I don't want to be here. By here, I mean the podcast. And I just feel like kind of in a bad mood. But I think I'm also about to start my period, so that could be a correlation. But it makes me feel sad that when I don't feel like I care and I don't have a lot of energy to care, and when I'm really irritable. So that's definitely an L. So I apologize. I also apologize because I was going to stream last weekend, but I didn't end up doing it. I was going to do it this weekend or sometime this week. So maybe I would have already done it, because I might do it on the Wednesday before or the Friday. So maybe I've already done it. But anyways, I'm sorry if you were looking forward to that. I don't know if anyone was, but I will be streaming soon, just for a couple of hours, and play Nancy Drew Midnight in Salem, which is like the spooky witch one. Stay tuned for that. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the episode, and then we're going to do a Dear Abby, and that'll be it. Apathy. Don't know the definition of apathy, but from what I'm guessing and what I've heard, and my brain could be tricking me, but apathy, I believe, is when you just don't feel motivated, energized to do anything. I don't know the difference between apathy and depression. I feel like you can feel very apathetic without being depressed, from what I understand, but I don't know. I'm not an expert on either of those, but I have experienced depression and I've experienced apathy, and sometimes I don't really know sometimes I don't know how extreme my apathy is until I am very depressed, and then I realize, oh, I'm depressed. Like, I recognize this and these thought patterns. I recognize these lack of feelings and just the thoughts, and yeah, I just recognize the nothingness of depression. So I was thinking maybe that's how I've been feeling lately, like this past week, but it doesn't feel like a depressive episode, because usually those are really intense, but this just feels just more apathetic. I don't know. So in regards to apathy, I have a hard time doing any recovery work or really working towards a value or a goal of mine when I have apathy and when I'm experiencing it, for obvious reasons, because you don't really care that much. Like, you feel like you don't care, even though 1% of you, or deep down, you do. And I know that I'll feel better and I'll be glad if I keep doing the things that I want to be doing for my future. But when you're feeling apathetic, it is hard to get the strength and the energy to do anything that's really productive or helpful to me in the long run, such as exposure and response prevention, or any homework that my therapist has assigned. I just don't want to do it. Like, I feel like defiant almost. Annoyed, I think, is a good word as well. I believe this is a common experience, and I don't have any solutions to not ever feel apathetic, and there probably are some solutions out there, but this is just something that I struggle with every once in a while, especially when it comes to recovery. Like, I think I'm recovered enough, but deep down I know that there's so much more that I can feel and so much better I can be. And so sometimes I think this feeling comes when I feel a little bit helpless and just tired, when I just feel tired of the hamster wheel of OCD and of rumination and of self-loathing and everything like that. I can do better, but then I'm still really struggling sometimes, and so then it gets worse, and then I have to climb back up, and then I fall, and then I climb back up. Sometimes I just hit this plateau of, like, if you're trying to crawl out of a hole and you're trying to like climb up, but then you fall down and then you climb up. This just feels like you're walking into the wall over and over again is kind of what the feeling is. And this kind of sounds sad and depressing. And in all honesty, it sometimes feels that way. However, something that I have learned on this years long journey with recovery is these are times that you should do the homework more than ever, in my experience, and not like go crazy or go above and beyond, but just do the simple homework assignments that you have or the simple exposures. Just keep doing something on those days, those weeks, those months, just little by little. You don't have to exhaust yourself because you probably already have low energy. But for me, I have to push myself to at least do like 1 or 2 exposures that are smaller, more simple. And that way I'm at least showing myself and my brain that I'm going to keep doing it. But I also really have to be super present with myself during these times and remind myself that it's also okay to be really tired, because this is an exhausting thing to have. And even though, yes, technically I do it to myself because I'm engaging with the compulsive or the avoidance or the avoidant behaviors, or, you know, the reassuring behaviors, it takes a long time for anyone that I know or have known to recover from OCD. So we always deserve to give ourselves that space and that compassion of, hey, you did your exposures today, or you did your work. You did A, B, and C to stick to your values. Now, maybe the rest of the day, you can just rot. Let yourself relax. Let yourself be calm. Sometimes it's hard to know exactly what you should do for yourself. And I think sometimes on the podcast, I feel like I want to find all of these answers and share things, but sometimes I don't find anything that helps immediately, or I'm not sure if it works in the long run. And apathy is one of those things that I just still struggle with. I've said this before and I'll say it a million other times. I think when we assume we're being compassionate enough to ourselves, I think we've just kind of hit the surface of how much more compassionate we can be. And that doesn't always look like laying down and being, you know, soft and relaxing. That can look like going and doing a HIIT workout and doing something that's uncomfortable and pushing yourself to do something you wouldn't normally do because you think, you know what, I do want to do this eventually and I want to feel better about doing this. So I'm just going to go and do it because my future self deserves that. But sometimes it does look like taking the day off mentally and being like, I'm only going to do 1 or 2 things. And then I'm just pooped. Like, I just want to lay around. Obviously, if you're prone to having depression, don't get into the habit of doing that. I feel like it's not the best to get into the habit of doing that, because I notice that when that happens, I start to do it like every day or more often. And I tell myself like, I'm just going to lay down. Then it's been a couple of days, then a couple of weeks. And then I'm like, oh, I'm depressed again because I haven't been really living, you know. I've just been in robot mode. I also have just had some brain fog too, so it's hard for me to understand people right now. Like, I have to have them repeat something or I have to ask stuff multiple times because I have no retention of information happening in my brain. I think that also just causes a lot of just sad feelings and feeling inadequate and blah, blah, blah. What I normally do when I feel really apathetic is be very compassionate to myself, very loving to myself. And what that translates to is partly being very soft and gentle, letting myself relax, not think about anything. Sometimes I just need to turn my brain off. But then the other part looks like still doing the exposures that I'm supposed to be doing for homework, still living according to my values, and still practicing things that I want to practice or dancing when I want to dance. It's a universal experience. It's a rite of passage of sorts because everyone's going to feel it. And I love my podcast. I love a lot of what I do. Not my 9 to 5, but it feels good knowing that I've felt this before with doing the podcast and with doing other things on the side, and yet I still have done them. So it doesn't matter how apathetic I'm feeling. I know what I care about. I think the only thing that makes me sad is when I feel apathy is when and I don't want people to pick up on that or feel like I don't actually care because they can somehow sense that off of me. I don't know. Okay, so I also said I wanted to talk about when your OCD themes change and the content changes and you start to obsess over something else. That's not what you thought you would ever obsess over. And I just wanted to share a little bit about my experience recently with this, and it really threw me for a loop. I've recently been struggling with a couple new themes actually. They just came out of nowhere. I've had a couple intrusive thoughts and a couple things my whole life with these themes, but they've never been the sticky ones, especially when I've had chronic. So it kind of, when I was starting to squash some of the religious, existential, scrupulosity, moral stuff, harm was a huge one, but now I don't really have any harm things. Every once in a while I'll have intrusive thoughts that'll spike my anxiety for a second, but it goes down pretty fast. And now I've had like a lot of somatic OCD creep in and a lot of counting and a lot of swallowing. I'm constantly trying to clear my sinuses. I am not kidding. I probably like try to cough out everything in my throat and my nose like 90 times a day. And it's exhausting. It is so exhausting. My throat hurts sometimes at the end of the day because I've just been trying to get everything out. It doesn't work, obviously, because as we are humans, we will always have more sinus stuff, but my brain just won't stop sending me signals to clear my sinuses. And this has been a couple months now, but the past month it's been bad. At least 50 times every single day, up to 90 times. I'm thinking about clearing my sinuses. I'm also hyper aware of every time I swallow and how open or closed my throat feels. If it feels good enough, like right now that I'm talking about it, I'm noticing the size of my throat in the back of my neck. I don't really want to go into a lot of it because if you don't have the tools and this stuff is very triggering, then I won't go too deep. But if you do have the tools, when I talk about specifics with somatic OCD specifically, then you should use them. So hopefully you can use this as an exposure. I also really struggled with blinking for a while. Basically, whatever I say right now, that's what my brain changes to. So right now I'm focusing on how many times I blink. It's just, I see my life through blinking eyes. That's like all I can think about sometimes. Another thing is breathing. I always try to get a deep breath, and I probably do that 30 times a day. It's very hard not to try to get a deep breath because I kind of get a panicky feeling. So yesterday I did a workout, like a HIIT workout, and I kind of wanted to feel that panicky thing because I've heard of therapists making their clients do jumping jacks or something to kind of trigger like having a hard time breathing or just like that panic, where your brain's like, I need oxygen. And so you just kind of panic it a little bit to get used to that feeling. So I did that and I had a couple minutes there where I was pretty panicked. But it eventually came down because I was like, you know what? If I pass out right now and I die, then that's crazy. But I guess I die. I can't do anything about that. I'm not going to not work out or not do HIIT workouts because I'm scared that my heart's going to beat too fast and I'm going to be dead in 2 seconds. Because if that happens, then I'm at peace with that because that's crazy. And that was meant to happen then, I guess. It's been a lot of that stuff when it comes to counting my blinks or counting my swallows or anything like that. I've never thought in a million years that I would struggle with that because mine was mostly just religious harm, POCD, just a lot of the taboo things where I'm a bad person. I've gone over this a million times. I would always hear people talk about somatic OCD and like blinking and swallowing. And I'm like, oh, I wish that I was struggling with that versus thinking that I'm sinning every time I open my mouth, that I'm constantly doing something horrible and I'm going to hell. But now that I have it, it's just, and because I never thought it would get me, I think it got me. And I realized after like 2 months of like I said, those very compulsive clearing behaviors of my throat and my sinuses and checking my heart, checking my throat, checking my breathing. I realized when I was talking to my therapist, I was telling her about these, and I'm like, I realized that that's OCD. It's somehow just like, because the other things weren't as big, it's kind of stuck its ugly head up in this way. And now I'm stuck with it again because it's so hard. And I've never struggled with physical stuff that much, but I am struggling so bad with this one. It's so hard and the urges are so intense. Yeah, it's hard and it is exhausting. So I think that's why sometimes I do start to feel a little apathetic, because it does feel a little bit hopeless sometimes, but that's just a feeling. Just to remind myself and to anyone else that feels like that, it's just a feeling, and it's okay that you feel like that. But it's not a fact that it is hopeless because your themes have changed. It's not a fact, and it's not a death sentence. Things will get better, and they will get better if you keep committing to recovery. Even if you're tired, even if you feel apathetic, you have to keep committing to recovery and picture what your life will be like in 2 years, and don't let that vision go, and work towards that in whatever way that looks like. So just because it feels like a life sentence, it's not. That's a lie. Just because your themes have changed a million times and now you're struggling with something else and it feels just as tight, the journey's not over, then that just means you have more work to do, which can be tiring, but there is work that you can do to get better. That's not a lie. And even as I'm sitting here thinking, like, OCD tricks me so much with what's real and what's not. And it's so annoying when you realize how much OCD was skewing your vision and clouding your thoughts, clouding your mind, clouding your feelings. And it tricks you, and it sends thoughts like, you shouldn't trust your therapist. These specialists don't know what they're talking about. You know, you're smarter than them. You're the only one that it's not gonna help. They have to find the perfect, exact, right treatment plan for you. And it's going to be different than everybody else's. And so you're different in a bad way. And oh man, your theme changed. That means you'll probably never recover because you messed up again. That's just the way OCD speaks, is those annoying, loud, rude, obnoxious, irrational things that it says. Like, no offense, but you're probably not smarter than the therapists who have gone to years of training. And also when they're specialized in something, especially through certain programs, there's ongoing education of recent studies. So don't let OCD cloud your mind, cloud your judgment, and there's always a way through, even though you can't see it sometimes. So you just got to trust the people, the professionals in your life. I've had to trust them more than I trust myself sometimes. And not my core self, but my OCD self. It's hard to do. It's really hard to separate sometimes. I think that's all I wanted to talk about with changing themes. I think I'm going to do an episode. I'm going to do an episode about that again soon, because I think it's a very valuable thing to talk about, because most people experience that. Some people, it's only like 2 themes, and then it like just kind of, that's just their main sticky ones, and they don't get stuck with anything else. But for me, it has really bounced around. I mean, it's crazy. It's something me and my therapist have been working on as well. I probably should ask her more about themes changing, like if there's other things that I need to be doing so that other themes, when they pop up, I'm more able to notice those, because I think I have a hard time doing that, obviously. Okay, so let's do a Dear Abby, and then that'll be it for this episode. I haven't done my phone in a long time, so here we are. You remember this bad boy? Okay, you know what? Actually, the next one on the list is a text message, so I don't need this at all. Yeah. See, a dumb phone. I wish I just was live. That way I could do live call phone-ins. Dear Abby, but then that would be awkward if no one called in, because then it would show that no one listens to my podcast. And I'd be like, no, people listen. Just give it a second. Then crickets. Dear Abby, excuse me. Dear Abby, I need some advice about making friends. The universe seems to be against me because as a kid and teenager, literally every time I made a friend, they moved away. Like big cross-country moves, haha. Even as an adult, every time I've gotten close with someone, it's only a matter of months before they let me know they're moving away. Who has that much bad luck? I feel like I've closed myself off so much because why bother putting in the effort when it's been the same result literally every time? Truly, my only friend is my husband, and I feel so sad when I see a group of close girls because I want that so badly. Specifically, I need advice about getting past the surface level small talk phase. I mean, I've never really been able to practice going deeper since my friends always leave. Haha. I'm a new mom and just craving friendship and community and people I can connect with, but I just don't know how. Please help. That's a very real desire to want to have friends, especially if you're a mom and a new mom, because you can feel very lonely because your husband's great and everything, but there are different roles that girl friendships and just women can play in your life. So a couple of things. One, when you see a group of friends, I'm not saying this is the case every single time. I'm just saying sometimes it appears better than it actually is. I think for me, I just never like to assume that everyone else is like perfect and their relationships are perfect and everything's perfect, because I don't think that's accurate. Not saying that they don't have deep, enriching friendships. I'm just saying it's probably not as perfect as it might appear from the outside looking in. However, again, because there's so much value that can come from woman friendships, especially being a mom, and you need that support and that womanly love and that feminine love for you and your child. When we want close friends and that type of relationship, I've noticed within myself, I've talked to my sister a little bit about this too, it creates more pressure if we're just like, oh, I want a big group of girlfriends that we're all really close. It's like, obviously, it would be awesome if we were all close to a bunch of good girlfriends and they had our backs and it was beautiful and supportive and perfect. However, sometimes, though, when we do that, we kind of lose track of the real foundation of a really good, enriching friendship is just being present with each other. Over it being perfect, and take kind of the pressure off of yourself. Like, I hope this turns into a friendship for forever, you know? I think small talk is okay for a while with, new friends, because sometimes it can just be light and not heavy and not crazy, and let things just happen naturally. Sometimes it's better to let things flourish naturally. I mean, you put an effort, obviously, but it's not overbearing. And I do think it's hard to know when to go deeper with people. Some friends make friends by doing small talk for a long time until they have to go deep because something happens, they need help, and that's fine. Those build beautiful friendships. And sometimes it's the opposite, where you maybe have two people that like to talk about things really deeply, almost immediately. So then the second time you're hanging out, you're going deep, you're crying, and then you have a great bond, and then you can do the small talk stuff later. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert on this. I think from my perspective, something I can always do better in friendships is really allowing people to see my vulnerability, because I think I sometimes allow a little bit of it, but I always hold back because it just doesn't feel safe for me still sometimes with people, and it has nothing to do with them. They're probably safe people to be vulnerable towards or to open myself up to, but it's just not something I'm comfortable with most people yet, and it takes a long time for me, and I think that's okay. That's just the way that I've been, and I don't really feel a huge need to change that. But you definitely have to let people in to your inner world little by little, not all at once. That's a little bit overwhelming on the receiving end. I don't know if any of that advice is helpful. To be honest, I'm horrible at making friends. Okay, that's horrible. I shouldn't say I'm horrible at it. It's just, I'm not a friend magnet, I'm not a friend magnet. Some girls are, and that is just a gift that they have. It is not a gift that I have developed, and it was definitely not a gift that I was given naturally. So I apologize. I probably gave some really crappy advice. All in all, just don't not invest time in someone, because even if they move away, then if you've had great times together and you enjoyed their company, then it was worth it. It doesn't always have to be for life. Sometimes it's just as beautiful that it starts and it ends. and you're friends for a little bit and then they're gone and you're like, you were a friend for me and that period, and that's beautiful. So sometimes that's all it is. I do feel like my main thing with friends is that I do not let people in, because I also feel like what do I let them into? I feel like some people want more from me when I'm hanging out with people. They probably don't. I'm probably just overthinking it. But sometimes I think, do people want me to talk more? Do people want me to give more input? Because sometimes I just want to like not say anything. Like sometimes I just don't feel like I have anything to say to the conversation. So I just would rather stay quiet. I like keeping my cards close to my chest until people want to play and they've shown that they're a worthy opponent. Then I will show them all of my cards. My fiance just barely got to that point with me. That's the struggle of being an introvert. So you think I could probably add something to this conversation, but you guys seem like you're going back and forth. I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to, try to get myself in there. I'm just gonna listen and, hopefully I don't look like a little weirdo creep not saying anything in this group setting. Well, that is today's episode of Dear Abby. Thank you guys for always giving me the space to be honest and express, I think, just the struggles of life and living with OCD and anxiety and depression. And I'm always grateful for that. You guys are the best and the most beautiful and lovely, handsome people. If you want to support my podcast, you can subscribe, comment on YouTube. I would really appreciate that. You can also find me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you could leave a rating and a review, you can comment on Spotify. I think they ask a question after the episode, like, did you enjoy this episode? If you want to tell me what you enjoyed, what you maybe would want to see different in the future, I'm always up for critiques. Yeah, if you have any topics that you want to hear from me specifically, I love when people DM me those, because I have a billion ideas, but it's just nice to know what you guys want to hear me talk about. Yeah, thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and I hope you guys have a lovely weekend. Be kind to yourself, take yourself out. Love you. Bye. Taking a ride to Jonah Lake. 눈치 보면서 들어가 할 때 찾아. 나머진 바빠. 개설레임 바꾸는 사람들. 시간